Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. It's me, Omar Shamborha, the Burger Popper, joined by an old friend and a longtime friend on the podcast, who we've been friends since the USFL days. Rest in peace. And our league, our beloved league, is gone, and also seems like I guess every remnant of it is about to be gone. If this relocation of every remaining UFL or USFL legacy franchise goes through, even though Birmingham's putting up a fight. I'm glad they are. I got some friends in a group chat that really pushing to keep the team in Birmingham. But our love of the Generals brought us together, and then we're able to meet last college football season at Notre Dame Navy. And I just enjoy talking about Eastern college football. Long for the day when we'll be able to meet at a Rutgers game. I'm joined by Matty Waters. Matty, how's everything going?
Good. Thank you for having me back, and I look forward to our chats. We haven't had a good one in a while, and yes, the remnants of a once proud spring football league is slowly and surely fading away into the sunset. But there's always hope. There's always hope for once again it might get raised. But we have a new college football season upon us, and we do play football on the East Coast. Some people may not remember that, but it's slowly and surely coming alive again in various spots. So between Rutgers having a couple of decent years now under Greg and building up, although the schedule's gotten tougher, and Fran Brown doing a very good job up at Syracuse. Casey Keeler back in the East Coast at Temple in an area that he knows well. So you have three programs that have been around a long time and representing the East Coast, and Boston College as well, developing into its next year under Bill O'Brien. So, I think you might actually see some interest up and down the northeast quarter there for the game this fall, and then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm excited too because coincidentally, I'm also recording a Lambert preseason poll podcast with Bobby, the TNT College Football Podcast, a big UConn fan and journalist, and I was making my rankings for the Lambert Trophy, and I'm like, man, like honestly, I'd say number 3 through 11 is honestly interchangeable because you have like a chance where like 11 Lambert Trophy eligible teams can make bowl games. I mean, whether they be 6-6 or all the way up to maybe like 11-1, like Penn State or people think Navy are going to be. Like Northeast football hasn't been this healthy in a while, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, you still have West Point, Army coming back from a very successful season. You have Navy building itself back up. You have UConn, who came off a good season last year and is looking to make some noise with their schedule, which seems pretty conducive to them. And I think UMass, with the hire of Joe Harrisiniak from Rutgers, actually, as their head coach, he's going to try to revitalize that program. But his experience at Maine and knowing the area, I'm sure his first year will be a rough year, as it usually is when you take over a program that's been downtrodden. But they're trying to breathe life back into themselves. So I think Northeast football has a lot going for it. And then I know people, they lump Penn State into the Lambert Trophy, but I kind of feel like Penn State doesn't really sit in the Northeast for football per se, in a sense, just location wise. Although I know they have their fan base throughout the area. So, and there's a lot of pressure on James Franklin this year to produce, the level that they're expecting, especially, having a solid quarterback, solid running game. They have a lot of weapons. So I think everybody's looking to say them and Ohio State is a two-horse race within the very competitive Big Ten, with I guess maybe Oregon being the outsider to crashing that party. But I don't think he would get fired if he doesn't win the Big Ten this year. But I think the heat will start getting turned up where I'd say that very close to a SEC level, we'll still buy him out and find somebody else because he can't get over the hump. But they certainly have a lot of talent this year. And I guess maybe in a good way, we don't have to see them until the last game of the season. So, we can at least recover from that game because it's going to be a very physical, difficult game, by the time we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I overlooked the fact that you guys do play Penn State as the so-called unrivaled Nittany Lions on Thanksgiving weekend. Um, so, man, yeah, it's good to see that game. I think that game should be a yearly staple of Thanksgiving weekend, to be honest with you. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I do think us in Maryland do make a very good rivalry for each other. The schools are very similar, just in general. The student populations are similar, the proximity, and I think the games have been, more competitive overall over the course of our time in the Big Ten between the two schools. I think, as much as you want to have like Rutgers, Penn State, and you know, our side of the coin, not liking them, we're still just a little brother to them until we beat them and finally beat them again. But I think us in Maryland developing that with each other, I think is a good thing for the conference and a good thing for both schools because you kind of need that. So I think, us in Maryland still playing again this year. I think pretty much we're going to continue to play each other every year. I think that's a very good thing for both schools. I think it does well. And in my house now, it becomes a little bit of a civil war because my daughter will be getting moved into the University of Maryland next Thursday. So
yeah, I mean, shoot, I guess that adds an extra element to it, and I would agree, honestly. I do
we,
think,
I was gonna say, I forgot Delaware now, right? So we have
oh, yeah,
Delaware in the FBS ranks.
yeah,
So in their first year in baptism by fire into FBS, and what's in store for them. I think they come in as a better than equipped team than maybe some other teams in the past, but still now you're going to play a full season at that next level. So there's another Eastern
yeah.
football team that's risen itself up, and we'll see how that goes as well. So you pretty much have from DC to Boston, playing at a Division One, FBS level now. So I think that's pretty unique, and I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Like never, like Northeast football never been healthier. I guess not never, but it has been healthier in a while. So I'm
Yep.
pretty excited. Could have 11 teams, and including Delaware. I think Delaware could make a bowl this year. To be honest with you,
I don't know if they're eligible in their first year though.
it's if they're not eligible, but if there's not enough bowl eligible teams, then they'll slide in. Which I completely project there won't be enough bowl eligible teams. So I think they can slide in. Honestly, um,
I think
yeah.
Conference USA is doable for them.
Yeah.
I think they stay healthy.
Yeah, there really isn't much in terms of the contender aspect for Conference USA aside from Liberty and maybe Utah. They got a 5-star quarterback, so who knows? But going on to our topic, or one of our first topics that we were going to discuss. So of course, network selections for the first 2 weeks of the season are already out. They have been out for a while, since late May, and especially too, Fox planned out their Friday night games, and so the first year of the great big Fox Friday night experiment has come and go. Rutgers had a couple appearances last year. I know the USC Rutgers game had outstanding viewership just because it was like a perfect storm of circumstances with the World
Yeah.
Series, probably one of the greatest World Series games of this millennium or ever in general, taking place right before it. And of course, USC and Rutgers, being in the same home markets as those teams, helped the ratings a lot. I think over 2 million viewers watched that one. And then, of course,
Unfortunately for us, too many people watched it.
yeah. It was a good game. Like,
We were banged up though. We were very banged up in that game.
yeah, you guys like played very well and hung around like for a while. So I mean, I'd expect that from a team playing at 11 p.m. on Friday night.
It was.
Like
It was. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the result we wanted in the end show, but I mean, we were pretty banged up by the time we got towards the end of October. Got a little bit healthier with the bye week after that, and had a strong November. So, and then our Washington game that Friday night in September, I thought, from a Rutgers standpoint, it was a packed stadium. It was well received by our fans, and I think everyone's looking forward to this Friday home, the one that's this year, which is on September 19th against Iowa. So for us, I think the fans like a Friday in September. I think the fans like because it's still good weather. It's an enjoyable tailgate. So I think if you put that later in the season, it wouldn't be as well received. It's cold and it just gets dark so soon. It's not as enjoyable, but I think it's still in a good spot from that aspect. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if we have another Friday night game.
against Washington on Fox Sports
That's
One.
it, Washington. Yeah. on this.
Washington.
So we'll see. Another West Coast, Friday night late, trip out. So we'll see how we respond to that. Although we do have an open date the week before, so that might be helpful. Maybe we even actually get out there a day or two earlier to just let the bodies adjust to the time difference. But I mean, it's going to be a tough game, right? I mean, we pretty much open up with two of the best teams in the MAC, and we slip in there Michael Vick, and who knows what he's got designed and what he's going to do with his team, and then you pretty much get into a grinder for us the entire season in the Big Ten. So there'll be no weeks off. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think anybody's a gimme. I don't care. It's the Big Ten. I think everybody comes to play. We'll see about maybe Purdue is the only one on that list that you say right out, oh, that's a game we should win, but we got to go there to play them, not playing them at home. So, I watched Purdue, many times beat teams at home that they shouldn't beat. So I don't think that there's any gimmies on this schedule for us at all. We've got to come to play, but we fortunately have a coach who prepares. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think the Friday though, I like it to some degree. I enjoy having the Friday games, not just from Rutgers, but from a fan perspective. And listen, we're a school that's going to get stuck with them, right? We're not Saturday night yet. We're not good enough to be Saturday night yet. But you know what? If you can showcase your program nationally on a Friday night, people still go out to bars and put things up on the TV and they want to see, what's going on. So I still think it's an opportunity to showcase the program to people around the country. And if do well and play well, you can make a name for yourself. So I think it's a great opportunity. We need to get national exposure, and if you have to do it on a Friday night, so be it.
Yeah, I agree. Like honestly, just having a primetime game on one of the Alphabet / over the air networks, it's a huge plus. Any team would envy that. Like I mean, I was like, yes, like I guess in terms of Army Notre Dame, like I was I was thrilled with the opportunity, even though we lost 49-14 because we were on NBC. But I mean, like you said, any time slot, like especially the fact that it's accessible.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to improve as a program if you're not on TV. You got to get exposure. You got to show recruits, and other players that are transfers, in this NIL era. Like, if you come here, you can get your name out there. You can be on a big stage, and national TV, coast to coast, Fox. That's a big stage. It doesn't matter that it's Friday night. You have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think a question I had too wanted to discuss was with the Miami game being on Peacock. You guys got bit with the Peacock bug early. I guess what's the general feel of those games like with the fan base?
Well, I would say I think your younger fan base kind of thumbs its nose at it because it's on Peacock. I think your older fan base is like, there was a time we weren't on TV at all. Like, and I can remember those times. Like, it was like ESPN, whatever. And so, you couldn't even get it sometimes. You'd have to do pay-per-view in the late 90s sometimes to see a Rutgers game, or we were on, the Big East Network on MSG to get our game on TV. So I think, so we have to play Miami of Ohio on Peacock. I don't think it's the end of the world for the program. I don't think it's a game that makes or breaks you. And to be honest, it's the way it is. I mean, the NFL plays games on Amazon, or they're going to play games on Netflix. Like, streaming is part of media now, and you just have to accept it and, either adapt or die, right? Straight out of Moneyball, but it stands true, right? You have to learn to say this is one of the opportunities you have to showcase your program. And, in some ways, is it really that much worse than being the BTN slotted 3:30 per se? I don't think it's any worse, really. I mean, being on Peacock, I think most people that want to see that game that would watch it on BTN are going to have access to Peacock for the sports as it is. So I don't think you're really hurting yourself. I think if you were to say, we're putting a premier program that you're playing on Peacock and you're not getting as much exposure, maybe you could have a gripe. But I think an out-of-conference game, between us and one of the better teams of the MAC on Peacock, I think is fine. And I think for Peacock, it's not a bad game for them to want to have because I think they see it as this is a good MAC team, right? We're looking for a decent game that we want to have as part of our profile. Because both Ohio and Miami are very good MAC teams. So it's still a challenge, right? You better bring it because MAC teams like to beat so-called bigger teams all the time. So we need to bring it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting though, like you said, like comparing these games to the old Big East network and the syndication, which I grew up on. That's how I got into, I guess, Northeast football, seeing Syracuse every week back in the mid-2000s on syndication because no one wanted them. I thought that they were a really good team because they're on TV all the time as a kindergartner and first grader. So I do think that that's kind of the type of game where it's like the Big Ten network was like, you could take this, it's like kind of just push it off to the side and, gave to the streaming services. And Peacock, I will say, they do have some good deals, honestly. Like, this is my third year as a Peacock subscriber because they keep, or second year, I think it's my second year as a Peacock subscriber because they keep giving me that $20 for a whole year. And, like, I'm not going to say no if there's 10 Big Ten games for $20 in a year. Like, so not a bad service.
And if you have a college student in your house, they can get it for the first year for $2.99 a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For the first year. So it's not too bad a deal. If you have a college age kid in your house, you can just, all you need is their student ID. You can still use your own email and stuff. Not that I didn't do
that. Anything to see, anything to see the Scarlet Knights win a game against the MAC, fandom and college football fandom reaches certain levels of I can't think of a better, I guess, depravity. I think that's probably the best word, even though ID fraud, I guess a college ID fraud isn't the worst thing that you could do.
He gets to watch it too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely for him.
So. It's all good.
It's definitely for him. So going on to our next topic. So just the buzz this week, I guess, surrounding the Big Ten. Like the Big Ten has had a really not great press run over over the whole off season, especially Commissioner Tony Petitti, who has made various. I guess he's been kind of MIA in the whole playoff talks and only showing up from time to time. This time, mentioning a 2018 playoff. So I guess where does Rutgers fit into this landscape, Matty?
I don't even know in 2018 how viable we've got to be because it's just the hills we have to climb in front of us. But like, if you're going to have 28 teams, how many teams would you take from the SEC and the Big Ten? 8 apiece, 16 teams. That leaves 4 from 12, Big 12 and ACC. Right, so that would bring you to 24 teams, and then that would leave 4 spots out there that you find around. And still, for us to finish in the top 8 of the Big Ten, it's a monster season for us. That's a massive season for a team. But I think in our best year might have been last year or first year is still only. I don't even think we were that high, right? I think we were 10th as our best finish in the Big Ten ever for wins and losses. So I think for us. Yeah, it gives us access into a playoff because now we only got to get to slot 8, but to get to slot 8 is still no easy task. But then it becomes, that's just a myriad of a mess. Like, then what's the alternative, right? If we have 28 teams, are we playing any more bowls, or is that it? It's just playoffs at this point. In which case, then what happens to teams that consistently don't make the playoffs? Are we ever able to compete? Are we ever able to get the athletes to compete? Because we don't have a balanced, God, I'm losing the word, but salary cap. That's basically what because that's the key, right? In professional sports, a salary cap creates balance, a draft creates balance so that you have this finite postseason, but you've made it so that your teams have the opportunity to go from worst to first because they get better players through the draft and they have opportunities through a salary cap to hold on to players or sign players and not being outspent. And that's just not the case in college football right now. So, the teams that are at the top will just spend even more money to just be the only teams that are in the playoffs. So I think for us, it creates a very an inflection point, you almost call it, in where does the sport go and where do we fit in? Because are we close enough to make it worth our while as an investment, or is it apparent enough that we're never going to make it? I mean, not that Indiana was a failure last year and they're reaching the playoff, but like I sometimes feel bad. Like they had this amazing season and they were rewarded with a drive interstate to South Bend to get toasted and just destroyed in that game. And I feel like those fans should have had something way better as an end of year game for the great season that they had. It almost felt anticlimactic in a way. Like I'd hate for us to have our best season ever, and then it just ends up like we drive down to Virginia, or we drive up to Boston to play Boston College and we lose, and it's like, okay, that was what? Like, it just feels like to everything I've ever known about college football, like the anti-denouement to the entire story. It's great for the pros, right? I mean, that's what you expect of the pros. You go to the higher seed, you play it out. This is how it is. But college football just always felt a little bit different. I'd be sad to see all that go and just see that that's how it ends up, because then we're just basically watching another pro football league. And I don't know if that's what, I prefer to do that in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I'm not anti NFL, but like I don't even watch the NFL. I guess NFL's that much aside from Monday Night Football, just because like it's just not as interesting. Like there's not as much story to it. I mean, it all converges into one event, the Super Bowl, right? Where it's like with like you said, with college football season, like there's plenty of other things. And I know you as a Rutgers fan, just going to the different. I guess not taking success for granted. As
Yes.
an Army fan, I can relate to that too. Like where it's like with you guys, like being able to end a solid season playing it at the Diamondbacks ballpark like this past
Yeah.
year in 05, and then the year before too. Like imagine a world where Rutgers doesn't get to end their season and get to play Miami, a team that beat them for years in the Big East. I talked to Dan Okobeza from Ask for Football, like one of our leads there, and I told him that college football is like a Greek epic, where it's like there's so many storylines, there's so much lore, and that's what makes it so enjoyable. But you take away the bowl games and make everything converge under one storyline, all the storylines and the lore kind of just disappear. So
Yeah, because there's so many teams that get to have a happy moment to end their season. And when you go to just it's the playoffs, then it becomes, and go back to Moneyball again, right? Like if you don't win the last game of the season, nobody gives a shit. That's what it becomes, right? That's it. It becomes one team gets to go home with a smile at the end of the season. Everybody else has lost their final game, and college football wasn't like that. So teams that had a great, for them a great year or a successful year get to have something to enjoy, and to smile about, and to enjoy about as fans, and that was what kind of made college football unique. I mean, I know personally, right? I spent 30 years desperately wanting to go to a bowl as a little kid, all the way to 2005 when they finally made, the Insight Bowl, and how we felt as fans flying out there and getting to experience our first real bowl, outside of New Jersey. We went to that Garden State Bowl, which is like a half a bowl in my opinion to us, but to actually do it was amazing. And we just, even though we lost the game, we all had this amazing time and this amazing experience, because it didn't matter that we lost as much as that we had made it. And we felt like we finally climbed the mountain. And you just going to a first round playoff and getting beat, I don't think we'll ever have the same feeling for a school as the way the bowl game did. And I think that's sad to some degree, that's the only end game that fans get to have. I think, the pro game is fine. I don't mind pro football, but it's its own unique animal with its own unique personality, and I think that's fine. I think college football used to have its own uniqueness to it that was enjoyable, and I think it's becoming less of what it was and more like the NFL. And I don't think that's necessarily for the betterment of the fans overall, and I don't think for a lot of student athletes down the line it's going to be for the betterment either. Because the more it's treated like the NFL, the more those who participate are treated like the NFL. Where it's, hey, I know you got hurt, but this is a business, so you're out of a job. You know, it's not our problem. So
Yeah.
and yet, and maybe some people might say like, oh, you're just an older guy, you can't appreciate where it's going. But I'm not. I guess I like to hold on to that nostalgia to some degree and enjoy that stuff. I think gambling and fantasy has its place, and and helps people with interest and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that should take away, and try to drive, what made just sports enjoyable in its own capsule. I think you can still have both and still keep college football sort of how it was. But I do agree, two players and their value and what they're producing and not getting opportunities for money and things like that. I get that part too. I'm not completely blind to it. I just think the way it's been implemented and the pace at which they're trying to just do things, I think is detrimental to the game. I think had the NCAA not stuck its head in the ground for so long and really embraced where things were going and put guardrails up and structure up and could have tried to be at the forefront instead of running from behind, maybe would be in the situation we are where we're basically saying, well, I want 28 teams because I want to get as much of my conference into that playoff as possible to get as much of that pie as possible, which is really what the message is. It's not about the game; it's about the money. So I think that for me, as a little kid that used to watch Oklahoma, Nebraska play and had his own little bowl of oranges to throw at the TV when Oklahoma scored because the winner of the Big Eight would go to the Orange Bowl. You know, that's never going to happen again, right? That's lost. That's just gone by like the way of the dodo. So, in some ways, I think that's sad.
Yeah, I agree, honestly. Like, I think the Indiana example, I feel like we're on the same page with the Indiana example because, like, them having their best season since 1967 should have ended in Pasadena. And, like you said, it just ended up being a game at Notre Dame that was obviously, I mean, I didn't really watch many of the first round playoff games because they just felt so corporate, right? Like, it just felt like, and I know bowl season has sponsors and stuff like that, but I mean, even still, at the heart of it, it's a bowl game. It's the heart of college football. But the first round games of the playoffs of the college football playoff felt corporate, and it's only going to get more corporate as the playoff expands. I guess to 16, 24, whatever number they decide, and it's just less special. Like, I have been probably the most staunch Pro Bowl defender there is. Like, I mean, I think I was on record. I think I've put it on Twitter. I think I've maybe even been recorded saying it on a podcast where it's like, I don't want Army in the playoff. Like, if we end up winning this conference, like, put me in the Independence Bowl because that is one of the most historic bowl games, and like, there's history to it. It's better than just taking a first round beating against. I guess it would have been it would have been Texas. Yeah, like, it's better than just having to go to Darrell K. Royal Stadium and be the obvious road game. Just be essentially like, thanks for playing, Army. You had a great year. Thanks for playing. That
Yep.
touchdown record, that rushing touchdown record for Bryson Daly. It's not happening today. So, it's just stuff like that. Like, and I think bowls are healthy for the sport, but I think the fact that it's troubling that people or conferences, whoever it is, networks want to converge on one thing than seeing the big picture and see one thing being a cash cow, and they only see that thing as being, they only see the money as what's, I guess, guiding their
Agreed.
direction. They're
Agreed.
committing to it, and they're committing to it too much rather than seeing the whole picture. So I feel like you're gonna lose a lot of fans in the process, But yeah. As for you guys, like, I would love to see you guys one day, like, I guess in this current climate, say it stays at 12 teams. I'd love to see you guys play in the Citrus Bowl because, like, when I think of Citrus Bowl, I think ABC. Not on New Year's Day anymore, but like that's a good life.
Yeah,
Like,
I
that's
mean, the biggest bowl we ever got to go to was the Gator Bowl, right? And that's the biggest bowl stage we've ever gotten. We got there because Texas A&M got sick, but I went because I said to myself, "Who knows when I'll ever get a bigger stage for us to be on, regardless of how it is,
yeah,
for a bowl game." And I went because it just, to me, the Gator Bowl meant something in a way of just it's the Gator Bowl, like we're there. Right? It doesn't matter how we got here, we're here today, so we're playing.
yeah,
And still went down, still had some fun. And so I think there's a specialness to college football that's being lost, over time, and it's just I think it's sad.
yeah. So I guess Yeah, so the next topic just goes hand in hand with it. One of your conference mates and former basement dweller, not so much anymore as you guys have both your fortunes have gone up. Indiana has made a huge amount of news canceling. I think they canceled a series against Virginia, replaced it with a Group of Five team, and then just the past couple of days they scheduled our old friends at Howard. I know Rutgers has had many a meeting with the mighty Bison of Howard and Miami of Ohio, and then they added Indiana State to their future schedule. So I guess put yourself in Rutgers AD's shoes. Like, would you want to go the Indiana approach to non-conference scheduling just to make the playoff?
Well, I think we've done it in some years in the past. We've had some weak out of conference schedules, by design. I think at times, where I would say it wasn't always the strongest. I think this year we happen to have a better schedule, but who knows when they put that together whether they really were intending for both Miami of Ohio and Ohio University to be as strong as they are coming out. But my personal opinion always, what Greg used to say was that he felt like there should be one game that we win without question, which was always a FCS type of schedule. Then another team that it has to be a division, an FBS level school that is on par with us, right? To see where we're at, and then like kind of another mid-range school in between those. It's kind of used to be the philosophy that he used to try to have. I think he, rightfully so, as he's built the program to some degree, shied away from taking on too big an opponent, as a non-conference, because I don't think we've ever really been in a position where we felt our conference schedule, we looked at it, we're like, we're going to win, at least half these games. Absolutely. I think we were getting there right towards when Greg left the first time with the old Big East, but certainly with the Big Ten, the physicality of the conference, the quality of the conference. I can't blame Indiana for that per se, but I think it robs the fans of Indiana for home games and season tickets in a sense to say, like, at least two of these three games are going to be at home every year, almost guaranteed, if not all three to a degree. Because, are you taking yourselves to, to Western Michigan? Are you going to take yourselves to Eastern Michigan? Probably not. We just signed with or Central Michigan. We just signed, I think 28 or 29. We're going to play, but it's a 1-and-1 deal. Like, we're not going out there. They're coming to us, and then that'll be the end of it. And I get it, but I think as a fan, as a season ticket holder, I want to see quality games. Yes, Virginia Tech wasn't up to Frank Beamer standards when they came in 2 years ago, but you know what? It was still Virginia Tech. Like, that's still a game that was good to schedule and have on the schedule. We did have a game with Syracuse that ended up getting canceled because it got screwed up due to the COVID year and never got rescheduled. But I think it's important. I think schools like ourselves and Indiana and Purdue and Maryland need to have a balance to their out of conference. I think it's important I know you want to get wins to get an opportunity to go to the playoffs, but I think you also need to give your fans something that they want to see. And I think that's important. I think we want inventory that we enjoy, not just the TVs for the playoffs. We want to, it's our hard-earned money. I pay just as much money to see Rutgers play Norfolk State as I do to see Rutgers play Oregon. It doesn't cost me anything less. It's not a discount when Norfolk State comes to town. So, I would like to have some decent teams come in and, hey, we're being paid a lot of money to develop a good quality team. Let's get some good quality opponents in here that are to our level. I'm not saying go out and do 2-for-1s with Texas just so we can see Texas show up again with Piscataway. I think you have to have something that the fans enjoy that also is manageable for where your program is. But then who knows what with the playoffs does your out of conference matter as much? Will it start to become almost immaterial? And it'll only be about what you do in conference determines where you get. Because if it's like the top 8 teams in the conference and that's all decided by your conference play, and your out of conference becomes almost nothing to how it's decided to who's ranked 1 through 8 in that conference, then it almost becomes a waste of time. Like, what are we even playing out of conference games for? That's the other side of it. Because how do you decide who your top 8 teams in a conference are? You can't use the fact that Indiana beat 3 nobodies and maybe Wisconsin lost 2 or 3, but they had really good opponents and they're both at the same spot. Like, that's not fair, right? Because the strength of schedule, et cetera. Now you're going to go back to what we're bringing the BCS back in. Now we got the computerized. We're going to put the strength of schedule. Like, it's almost like, well, what have we done? We're right back where we started so many years ago. We might as well just eliminate the 2 through 8 and just use the computer to figure out the 1 seeds that we need from each conference and go ahead. So that's the part that gets weird when you start expanding it, how much the out of conference comes into play. It comes into play a lot when it came to bowl eligibility, but if there's no bowls, what's the meaning of it? Where does it take us? So then it becomes, are we just playing games so we can have seats and have inventory for TV, and then those games don't really impact your playoff approach, and maybe then you get better games because now it doesn't take you down. So I think it goes back to our whole conversation, which is this thing that we knew as college football is extremely fluid, and depending on where it shakes out will determine a lot of things, and things that were known for the past won't necessarily be known for the future. So I personally think you need to challenge yourself out of conference, but I do understand needing to have some games you can win and getting yourself a few notches under your belt. So I think for Indiana, I think they should, look to push themselves out of conference at least once out of, the 3 games that they're going to play. And I don't have a problem with them keeping 1 game to an FCS level and 1 game that they look at to say, oh, maybe it's a MAC, maybe it's a Conference USA, maybe it's, I don't know if you want to call the Pac-12 a lower conference or the American a lower conference, but those conferences as well, they're still competitive teams, and Washington State and Oregon State are still bigger names, but bring those teams in that have a little bit more cachet, to play. So I think, I think they took some crap for it in a way, but I don't think they're completely out of line. And certainly, like, listen, we're a school. We got to play Oregon. We got to play Ohio State. We got to play Penn State. We got to play Washington. We got to play Iowa. I mean, we have a right to say, hey, do you think maybe we could take a couple of weeks off of teams that are not as at that level, so that we're not as beat up and we're not as tired and we're not as dragging when we get into our Big Ten season. So, I can understand Indiana coming from that aspect as well. They have to go through a very grueling physical season, just like we do, and and you don't want to beat yourself up too much in the first 4 weeks of the season because you're out of conference is too tough. I think in Ohio State and in Texas they have the depth. They can go schedule those big time games because front to back they have the salary rostered to get out there and be able to compete and take 1 5-star out and put another 5-star in. But Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, we don't have those luxuries. So I think we have to be judicious in what we do and how we do it so that we can be competitive at the end of October and into November as well. So, I get some of the pushback, but I think Cignetti has a right to want to position his program for success. That's his job as a coach, and I can't blame him for that.
Yeah, I think that was pretty well put, honestly. And like you said, like, who knows in the landscape, like, what non-conference means, especially now where, I mean, it's a straight seeding, I guess, where all you have to do is have a strong enough record and be in a power conference to be one of the 7 best at-larges, and you're good to go, which I don't blame Indiana for doing that, honestly. I mean, I blame more so the world order that college football is in right now. But like you said too, like you mentioned Virginia Tech, Boston College, Syracuse, like in this landscape of college football, and it's not as true for Indiana, but at least for Rutgers, right? Like, just the reuniting with old rivals, keeping fans excited about the program, keeping those traditions alive. I think taking the Indiana approach really misses out on that, which I think that they cut off a game with Ball State, I think, which I know Ball State isn't a huge rival, but it's an in-state game. And just,
yeah, I mean, I would consider like Rutgers playing Temple similar, type of thing. Where like, yeah, it's not just some big in-state thing. Yes, they're in Philadelphia, but it's enough around in proximity and history with people and fans that it's a good game just to have. It's just good for the fans. Ball State fans, want to push themselves against the big state school, and the big state school is giving a chance to one of its in-state schools to showcase itself, and I think that's good. Similar to kind of the brotherly, expectations you want to have in the Northeast, right? Where it's just you don't have the in-state, but you have, hey, Syracuse, Boston College, Rutgers, Delaware, Temple. Let's play each other some more so that we can showcase what Northeast football is. UConn as well, UMass, like get more games amongst these schools to for the fans. And I think TV wise, I think it would be good, for that. And I think it would give some interest. I think it gives more interest than maybe some of the other matchups that are out there. I think that is something that's getting lost in all of it. Just the way conferences have aligned and the way then people are trying to schedule, you're just it's almost force feeding things down people's throats of what the schedules are, where it just doesn't give people juice that like this is our schedule. There's a lot less to it, and I think there's opportunity there. I think if they reevaluated it, but it's a money game, right? How much you want to pay, what are people willing to take? These schools are cheaper to buy than these schools, so we're not going to do it because we need to pay these players to stay here. So I think that comes into play as well.
Yeah.
Although MAC schools were starting to get quite a good price tag for a while, they were high demand. So and I forget SUNY Buffalo. I apologize to Buffalo for leaving them out in our Eastern discussions. They're a program that's out there, and they've had some good years and some off years, but they're there, so I should be remiss in eliminating them from our discussion.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, it's kind of weird though. Like you kind of like have that idea in your head of like the Northeast programs, like and like what conferences they're in, like the Big Ten with Penn State and Rutgers, the American with Army and Navy. There's like pairings and groupings, and then you have Buffalo and UMass out in the MAC, and it's like kind of hard to think of them. They're outliers in that conference. Like there really isn't a geographic
I always forget to mention Army in a way to Northeast because Army's been such a nationally scheduled program for so long with its status that it's almost like, and because it's just different, right? It's not like it has like this like local Northeast area per se because it's just a specialized thing. Same with Navy that you almost sometimes forget because they just have such a national brand about them.
Yeah,
it's almost like they're not regional; they're national. They're a different status. But I always loved when we would play Army and Navy because it was just a lot of fans from both schools could come to the games. Be at the games. You could also get a lot of the students could come to the games from the academies when they were away because of the proximity. And I thought that was made for a very unique Eastern experience. I mean, we had the entire Corps of Cadets one time at Rutgers. When we were struggling to fill that stadium back in the early 2000s. So, that's something you're not going to find at any other away game because we were close enough to do it. But it did make it fun and it made it unique. And I'm sure for the cadets, I'm sure they enjoyed everybody got off for the night just to go out and hang out somewhere else. So I think there needs to be more of that, but I don't know if in the current state of affairs if we're ever going to see that kind of stuff again.
Yeah, I think our best hope is a bowl game,
Yes.
Which I will drop everything in a heartbeat, to hopefully see our Army beat Rutgers, once in my life. There's just so I can be like, is this real? God, is this real? Like, did we just beat Rutgers after years of all those beatings? So I'm longing forward to.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah, you've had more opportunities too, but all I've known too, it's funny because I couldn't sleep one Saturday night, so I just kind of I put like one of the games from my collection on, and I decided for whatever reason just to watch the 2007 Friday night game, just to kind of reminisce and be like, okay, I mean, cool, like Friday night game, like how bad did things be? Yeah, the monsoon. I'm like, how bad did things used to be? And like, man, they were bad. Like that game was hard to watch. But yeah, like I mean, with the non-conference schedules too, like it's just I admire what you guys are doing. Just bringing back the old rivalries. Keeping Northeast football. I think that's just another aspect of Northeast football being as healthy as it is right now because you have programs like Rutgers. Keeping those rivalries alive. You have even Army, Navy, and Temple just being in the same conference in itself. Like that's a wing of the Big East in my eyes. In my eyes, like I perceive that like it's the Big East. So,
Yes.
it's just great. In general, and hopefully Rutgers doesn't go the way of Indiana, just scheduling just like random bad non-conference games too. Hopefully the Syracuse games, the Boston
And I'll
College
give
games.
credit to Oklahoma for showing up in Philadelphia this year, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot that was happening. Yeah, that's their home game. Honestly, I don't see many Temple
Ah,
fans showing up for that one.
it's, I mean, there are going to be a lot of Oklahoma people making a trip, I would think, just because
Yeah,
it's just a unique opportunity. But hey, at least they're doing it, right? They're going. I mean, yes, it's a bigger stadium. They're not coming into a small stadium, but nonetheless, they're willing to take the trip. So kudos to them for living up to that end of the deal. Because a lot of bigger schools, they say they're going to do it, and then they just cut bait and give them the payout and go hire someone else to come into their own place. So I'll give Oklahoma props for keeping that on the schedule and for taking the trip out to the link.
yeah. You just reminded me that Oklahoma actually owes us a game after the pandemic. So you just reminded me of that. So I know that's probably in the works. I know that I think Oklahoma has a trip to San Diego State also planned out. Like they just enjoy like they welcome those types of trips, and I admire them for it, like you said. So
Now that you're in Oklahoma, maybe you can swing by Norman and SDAD. When's the trip to West Point coming up?
yeah, I can ask them, be like, yeah, just play play the troop card, but um, I guess I'll just let it play out. But Maddie, thank you for joining. Do you have anything final to add? Anything or anyone you want to shout out before we sign off?
No, I mean, I think thank you to you for giving Northeast guys like me a platform to talk about our schools, which don't always get as much press as some of the bigger ones. I think that's one of the great things about your podcast and your writings that you find the unique, less publicized storylines and things that have been out there. And I personally appreciate it. And, I look forward to the season kicking off and seeing what else you have in store. And as far as we're concerned, we probably have the best team we've had since Greg came back, and we've got to go through a gauntlet of schools to do it. So, I'm not looking at this season as one as necessarily how many wins we're going to get, as much as I want to see about just where we are. And hopefully maybe we can steal a couple here or there that get us over the hump and at least while they're still around, get to one more bowl game um, for this year. But, I mean, just thank you to you and, best of luck to your guys out there and hopefully they come back with another championship out of the American and, you know, add it to their collection of things from the past and keep moving forward. I think last year was great, and I look forward to seeing where they go to this year.
Yeah, I'm excited too. But again, like just hoping for a bowl game in general. We just named our starting quarterback, so I'm expecting good things this year. And selfishly, hopefully, we get another Armed Forces Bowl. The fan base might be tired, but I've never been to Armed Forces Bowl, and I'm only 2.5 hours from Fort Worth. So hopefully, we'll see you guys there.
I think everyone like us really just wants to get into the Pop Tarts.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
If you can't get to the Rose Bowl, I want the Pop Tarts.
Yeah, and maybe I know there's going to be a shakeup with the tie-ins. I know the tie-ins are expiring this year, so maybe it'll be like the old days where it's like you got bowl representatives actually doing their jobs and going to these games and scouting teams. So maybe we'll be scouted paired in Orlando and have an excuse to go to Disney World.
There you go.
So thanks again, Maddie.
No
I always
problem.
enjoy conversations. Best of luck to you and Rutgers this season, and until next time. Peace, love, and soul. Burger Popper.
Ciao.